there was a man named Daniel. Daniel grew up in Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, where he was the son of a politically powerful family. And while he was still a young man, the nation of Israel was conquered by the nation of Babylon. Now, as was the custom at the time, many of the children of the influential families of the conquered nation were taken as hostages back to the capital of Babylon. This was a power move. It was meant to make sure that the families that stayed in the region would cooperate with the new regime. These were essentially long-term hostages. Now, being the son of a politically powerful family, Daniel was among those who were held hostage. And being a devout young man, he quickly drew the notice of the Babylonian elite for his strange behavior. Specifically, although most of the other hostages immediately took to the new Babylonian lifestyle, Daniel refused to even eat the food that was set before him because it was not in keeping with his strict dietary regime. Although he first drew the king's notice because of his unique eating habits, Daniel quickly made a name for himself as being a man of deep knowledge and wise counsel. And before he knew it, he found himself to be one of the 4 most powerful men in the nation. But he was still a hostage, and those who served under him were determined not to let him forget it.
So these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown to the lions. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." So King Darius put the decree in writing. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room, where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. "Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den?" The king answered, The decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then they said to the king, "Daniel, who was one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day." When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed."
Apparently, whatever Daniel had in the way of wisdom provided a healthy balance to the king. King Darius, who, despite being fond of Daniel, despite relying on Daniel's leadership, couldn't see past his own pride and self-love to realize the trap that had been set for him. So the king issued this edict saying, all have to worship me for the next 30 days and may worship no other god, even though he knows exactly the kind of person Daniel is and the kind of behavior Daniel will engage in. He knows that Daniel will not follow this edict. And sure enough, Daniel doesn't. He's dedicated to his faith. He's dedicated to his style of worship, so for every day, he continues to pray to the God that he worships 3 times every day. And in a surprise to absolutely nobody, except maybe the king, Daniel continues this practice even when his life is on the line. And the people who hated Daniel made sure that he got in trouble for it.
So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and the peoples of every language in all the earth, "May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions."
Now, this story began with once upon a time, and, well, you just heard that ending. You could pretty much stick "and they live happily ever after" at the end of this story and put it on the shelf with the rest of your Mother Goose and Aesop collection, because that's the kind of ending this story has. There's a great moral, all ends well for these people, and everyone is now doing the right thing because the king has had this wonderful conversion, and everyone is now going to listen to the king again, who has instructed them to worship the right God. In fact, this parable about Daniel and Darius and the lions is probably one of the best known stories in the Bible, precisely because it fits so well with our love of good stories with simple morals that we can read and follow. As we begin this Advent season this week, I want to invite you to join me in engaging in something called the Advent Conspiracy. There's information about the Advent Conspiracy on our website, on YouTube, and on Facebook, and it gives a practical way to live out 4 basic principles: worship fully, spend less, give more, and love all. The beloved story of Daniel in the lion's den reminds us, with its moral, of the first of those 4 core principles: worship fully. The reason Daniel is lifted up as a paragon that the people of Israel were supposed to heed and follow is because he engaged in worship in all that he did. Whether he was eating, whether he was governing, whether he was in captivity or free, whether he was under persecution or had the law completely on his side, Daniel was committed to worshiping his God in every way that he knew how. When others attempted to obstruct his worship practices, he worshipped anyway. And when the mouths of the lions were closed up and he emerged unscathed, when he could have claimed to have great power and insisted on his own way, he came out of that den and he made his survival also an act of worship. And those who saw this were changed. Worship fully. Make every aspect of your life an act of worship. And see if it doesn't make a difference in your life and in the lives of those around you.